Have you ever experienced a season in life where anything that could go wrong actually does go wrong? Maybe it's not necessarily super bad. It's just stressful and it feels like something's off. I've been in that season for about 2.5 weeks or so. And seasons like this, it kind of reminds me of the beloved Winnie the Pooh character, Eeyore. I don't know if you remember Eeyore, but Eeyore was unlike any other character that I watched as a kid growing up, any other cartoon character. And while all the other characters in the 100 Acre Woods were excited and in different mannerisms and things like that, Eeyore had this like depressed, staunch, pessimistic idea. And he had some of the wildest quotes. I'll never forget. One of the quotes was, "Don't worry about me. Go and enjoy yourself. I'll stay here and be miserable." And if you can think about like going through life, you've met somebody like Eeyore, or you've become somebody like Eeyore. And I feel like there are times when we go through these seasons where it's almost like we're going through a storm and it just lingers for a little bit too long until we start becoming that Eeyore in our life, where people kind of are like, all right, we can tell something's going on, but like, let's go. And I need that reminder sometimes, is that Eeyore was he was the character written specifically for that reason, to bring contrast to the 100 Acre Woods. While everybody else had a certain flow and there was this happy-go-lucky and this joy and this magic that took place, Eeyore kind of was this contrast that helped you appreciate the joy and the magic that was the 100 Acre Woods and the story of Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin. And I think that there are moments where we go through these storms, and I'll even say it in the words of Eeyore. He says, the nicest thing about the rain is that it always stops. Eventually. In the best Eeyore way possible, there's that long pause before he even says eventually. This too shall pass, I think, is a common phrase. I know I've talked about it quite a bit, and it's an interesting phrase, but it is something that does take place. Is the storms do eventually pass, but how long we're in the storms or how short we're in the storms is often up to us. I'm 35 years old, and I've learned that regardless of the preparation or the routines or the lifestyle changes that you make, storms are still going to come into your life. There's nothing that we can do to prevent the storms from happening all the time. We may be able to avoid a few of them, but there are going to be storms that overtake us. And it's these moments that I think really proves our character to the people around us. But more importantly, I think these moments, it can prove that you are or you are not who you say you are. So if you say you're somebody who's happy-go-lucky and you do, you're super positive and things like that, and then a bunch of stuff happens and the storms come and they hit, and then you turn into this really negative person who just breaks and crumbles, are you really able to say that you and your character match all the time? So sometimes it helps give you a contrast of, oh, okay, so I'm not always like that. So maybe I'm not going to tell people that I'm exactly like that, but maybe I'm going to work towards strengthening that. So the next storm that comes, I react a little bit better and a little bit different. And I've been through a lot of different storms, and I've been through a lot of different moments in life where I think that sometimes we need the storm to remind us, hey, you have come so far in life. You are so much stronger, right? Sometimes we have the umbrella, but we're so busy being upset. This is an Eeyore quote. I kid you not. I was so busy being upset that I forgot to be happy. Like, we are so busy focusing on the storm that we forget that we have the tools that could get us out of the rain. So whether it's an umbrella or friendships or physical health or whatever your community might be, maybe it's a job, maybe it's a family member, we have the ability to get out of the storm, and we need to be able to see that at times. There's this viral clip that is circulating around again. I feel like every few months it circulates through social media, gets a lot of clicks and a lot of shares. but it's the clip where the guy talks about how a buffalo will weather a storm versus how a cow will weather a storm. And most commonly, when a cow will smell or hear the rain, they will run from it. And eventually the storm will overtake them. And because they're running in that direction as well, they prolong their time in the storm because they're running away from it. While a buffalo, on the other hand, when they smell or hear the rain, they turn towards the storm and they run directly through it, causing the storm to pass by much faster and eventually the sun to back out pretty quickly, and they just face the storm. And there's something about that I think it connects with people. That's why it goes viral, is it connects with people on a level of, hey, there are things that are going to happen that we just can't prepare for, right? Storms, we can't prepare for them all the time. They happen regardless. But how we face them, we can control that. And sometimes you just have to learn how to embrace the suck. A friend of mine recently reminded me of this saying, and I used to hear it all the time, but embrace the suck. And it's just that reminder that not everything in life is going to be sunshine and rainbows. It doesn't mean that you should chase the storms of life, because I promise there's going to be plenty of those all on their own. But if you learn how to embrace the suck and to face the storms, you might actually find out that the storms don't last as long as they used to, which is a really good thing when you think about it, because that's a sign of growth and it's a sign of mentality where you're shifting your maturity from I want to avoid this to I want to deal with this now so that it's not an issue later. And that's something that we as a society, I think, tend to lack is that ability to address a situation, but instead we will push it down, suppress it deep down, or we will just completely dish it off to the side and say it doesn't matter because that person doesn't matter. I hear it more now than I ever have in my entire life. Cut out the people in your life that don't do X or don't encourage X or don't help you with X. We tend to never want Eeyore around us, when sometimes Eeyore is the exact contrast that we need in our lives. That storm is the exact thing that we need in our lives to bring appreciation and a little bit more shadow and joy and excitement to all the other things in life. And if we're always cutting out Eeyore, then what ends up happening is we do not know how to deal with those emotions. We don't know how to deal with those moments in life that we can't prepare for. And it's the beauty of having the ebb and the flow, the darkness in the light, right? Where you kind of can experience those dark moments of depression, but then when you get out of them, it just reminds you, oh my goodness, like one, I'm stronger than I could have ever imagined. We made it. And then two, I think it also shows there's a resilience, and it pushes us to understand that, okay, if I can withstand that, then the next time this happens, it's not that big of a deal, which helps you develop that strength, that little bit at a time. And I kind of want to encourage you on that. There's this beautiful verse in the book of James that I'll just read it. It's James 5:17-18. It says, Elijah was a man just like you and I. He prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. Again he prayed, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth produced its crops. Now, the reason why I think it's a beautiful verse is because it talks about a man just like us, and this is not, just a man, this man and woman, mankind, just like us, prayed that it wouldn't rain. And this is a callback to 1 Kings, where Elijah, this is in the Old Testament, where Elijah, who was a prophet of God, prayed that it would not rain according to the word of the Lord that was given to him. And for 3.5 years, it didn't rain. And it's really interesting because sometimes we have these moments where we forget that we have the ability to do so much more than we could imagine. Like if I told you, if you really could, or if you really believed and you prayed for something specific that was according to the word, the word of the Lord, it's going to happen, or it could happen, or it's going to happen in a certain time frame, and I've seen crazy miracles where I've prayed for something and then boom, there it was, like that same day, that same hour, that same minute. It's wild, but it doesn't always mean it's going to happen. But when it does, I think it's very interesting. Now, here's what's fascinating about that story of Elijah is for 3.5 years, it's not raining. It hasn't rained. And there's a ton of really cool things that happen in between the time where he prayed for it not to rain. In those same 3.5 years, he calls down fire from heaven, and it's super wild and awesome. So 1 Kings 17 and 18, highly recommend you. It's Game of Thrones stuff. Like, legitimately, the Bible is full of these incredibly exciting Game of Thrones-esque stories. And I think that many people forget that, or they don't realize that it's just incredible to read through. But at the time, King Ahab was with Elijah. It's been 3.5 years, and Elijah says, it tells Ahab to go eat and drink. And in 1 Kings 18:42, it says, so Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed up to the top of Mount Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees, meaning he's going to go pray. And then it says, then Elijah told his servant, go and look toward the sea. And his servant went up, most likely to the top of the mountain, and looked toward the sea. And he said, there's nothing there. 7 times Elijah said, go back. And the 7th time, the servant reported, a cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. So Elijah said, go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Now, mind you, it has not rained in 3.5 years. This is not something normal where it's like you get used to it after a while. Oh yeah, it doesn't really rain here, right? It's Southern California where it's like, we don't know what rain is. We just know sunshine. There's a rhythm that you go through, and eventually you can get into this rhythm where they were waiting for a storm. They needed the storm. The drought was starting to destroy the crops and destroy the land, and they needed this rain. And what I love is that right before verse 42 and verse 41, Elijah said to Ahab, before there was a rain cloud, even in the distance, a small rain cloud at that. In verse 41 of 1 Kings 18, Elijah said to Ahab, go eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain. He could hear it. Spiritually, emotionally, and maybe you have experienced something like that, where you can feel that something is about to happen, that a storm is about to come, or a drought is about to end, and you can feel it, you can hear it, you can sense it, you can know it is going to happen. And I've been through droughts, and I've been through storms just like the rest of you. But I want us to live a life where we can hear the rain. I want us to live a life where we have the mental fortitude to face the storms well, and we can face them together. Doesn't mean we have to do everything alone. And I was reminded about that today, and I'm very thankful for that. But part of this process and part of facing the storms does mean that you have to get out of your comfort zone. And it does mean that you have to be willing to have people like Eeyore around you to bring contrast and remind you and show you. You have to have those storms every once in a while, and you need to learn how to react in those storms so that you can build your character. So if you want to be somebody who is, you can say without a shadow of a doubt, I am steadfast in my beliefs. I'm steadfast in what I believe in. I hold true to what I want in life, or I believe in my career choices, or I believe in my school choices. Then when those storms come, you have to stand and really think about it. Okay, yeah, it may get really difficult for a while, but who are you during those storms? And how are you reacting to the people around you who are helping you still? But you could end up being like Eeyore, who you're so focused on being upset that you forget to be happy, or you forget that you have an umbrella available. One of my favorite sayings, long time ago, I wrote it in my journal, where I was going through a drought, and I kept praying and I kept praying and I kept praying. And it was this drought of, honestly, just young, mid-20s thought process of where I thought I knew everything I needed to know in the world. And it was way more difficult than I, really thought it was. But I remember I was going through this drought, and I kept writing about it and I kept praying about it. And at one point, I got scared that it was actually going to stop, because I got so comfortable in this prayer of, will this ever happen? And this will finally happen. And I pray that this will happen, and it's going to happen now. It's going to happen now. And then I started getting worried. What if it actually happens? Do I actually even know how to do that? And I wrote in bold letters in my journal, if you pray for rain, you better bring an umbrella. And it's the reminder that the storms are going to come. Whether you are in a drought, the droughts are going to come. Whether you are going through life willy-nilly and you're just go with the flow type of person, there will be moments that it's really difficult. And in those moments, remember that you have tools. Remember that you've gone through things before. And remember that you are so much stronger than you know. And this storm is going to shape and mold you into the human that you need to be in the future. I appreciate each and every one of you for listening to this podcast. It's been a wild few months, and I do apologize for not being consistent. But again, it's the storms of life, baby. We can't always prepare for them. And I'm going to keep doing this as much as I absolutely can. But I really, really appreciate it. I hope that each and every one of you have an incredible rest of your week. Remember to give grace, show love, and as always, stay stellar. Peace.